Well, I am going to make a video that I have been planning to make for the past several days. And I hope it's going to be of benefit to you. And what I really want to talk about is a few ways that we need to reconsider and rethink the future of the country. It's a huge topic, I know it. Very huge topic. But it seems to me that the point that everybody's missing, regardless as to the generation, is the importance of the wide distribution of private property. If Americans don't own property, they do not have the definition of liberty and freedom envisioned by the founders. So I've got several books. This is going to probably be a long video. But I've got several books that I want to read from and use to help make this point. Because the one thing I keep hearing from Gen Z, Groypers, everybody, is that we are not able to own property. And so I guess what this video is going to be is essentially an affirmation of the importance of owning private property as an American citizen and offer some solutions about how to make that happen for more people. I can tell you right now, I'll just tell you a few points immediately. One of the best things that the government can't do all of this for you. That's the first point to bear in mind. But the things that the government can and should do is, first of all, get rid of the 16th Amendment, which allows, I think I'm right on it, I think it's the 16th, which allows the Congress the power to create a federal income tax. The federal income tax needs to be destroyed. The IRS should be destroyed. That idea didn't work. It needs to be gone. The next thing that needs to happen is that there should be a nationwide ban on property tax. No tax on private property. We pay thousands of dollars annually for property taxes where we live in Kentucky. Where does that money go? A good chunk of it goes to the public school system, which we do not use because we homeschool our children. And so this is legalized theft is what it is. It's legalized theft. The only person I have heard say anything remotely like this is the governor of Florida. And he has said we need to get rid of property taxes nationwide. If you got rid of property taxes, that would be a huge benefit to people who want to own private property and who may not want to own it or can't own it because they can't keep up with the taxes. Property taxes is unconstitutional. It's un-American. It should not be tolerated. Taxation is what created the revolution in the first place. In one sense, there were other factors, but illegal taxation had a lot to do with it. And why are we tolerating property taxes in America? Why are we tolerating it? So, I think that young people across America, they want to have a house. They want to start a family. They want to, and forgive me, I should have put some better clothes on for this, but I make videos when the muse strikes. I wasn't going to make a video today, but I want to do it. I'm interested in doing it right now. Owning property is the American dream. It should always remain the American dream. And so I've got some books that I want to read from to kind of pull this point together with with some other people and their ideas, not just mine. So the first book I want to talk about is Who Owns America? This is the sequel to I'll Take My Stand, and this was published in 1936. But interestingly enough, I don't want to read from the essays themselves. I want to read from the introduction, the foreword in this edition, which I think was published by the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. I want to read from the foreword. I think the author is Edward Shapiro. Yes, Edward Shapiro, who I'm sure has no connection to Ben Shapiro. There's no way he does, because Ben Shapiro could not have written this foreword. But I want to go through this, and we're going to spend some time this evening going through this foreword and really talking about the importance of private property ownership to the American dream. Now, the 1930s, it seems to me, is a pivotal decade for us to understand. This was written in 1936, his book was. And many of the contributors were also the authors of the Southern Agrarian Manifesto, I'll Take My Stand, which went to press in November of 1930, a year after the stock market crash of 1929. So in the 1930s, there was a lot of discussion about economics, a lot of discussion about how we can help produce a larger amount of wealth in the United States. And a lot of people were toying with socialism. A lot of people were actually toying with communism. But there were also free market capitalists. But I guess what you could call this is the third way. And Alan Carlson, and I'm going to quote from his book entitled Third Ways in just a minute. But Alan Carlson has studied this for years, which is essentially the argument that it doesn't have to be either or. You don't have to be socialist or capitalist. There is another way of looking at the economy. And in the 1930s, there were several very serious writers and thinkers who were discussing this so-called third way. So I'm going to read a few points from this foreword by Edward Shapiro. And I hope that we can reach the end of this video with some understanding, a better understanding of options that we have moving forward to create a better future for not only young people, but generations yet unborn in the United States. So the book is dedicated to, and I quote, the need to restore the widespread ownership of property. Herbert Agar and Alan Tate are the principal editors of this book. Agar has a history around Louisville, Kentucky. Alan Tate, of course, was a member of the original Southern Agrarians, and he's not Catholic yet when this book is printed. I don't think he becomes Catholic until like 1949, 1950, but he's moving in that direction. And so Herbert Agar, in the book's introduction, says this: monopoly capitalism is evil and self-destructive, and that it is possible, while preserving private ownership, to build a true democracy in which men would be better off both morally and physically, more likely to attain that inner peace which is the mark of a good life. Without private property, without owning a home, there's no inner peace. There's no good life that you can attain. You're subject to the servile state, serfdom. You're working for somebody else. And so this is Edward Shapiro in the foreword. Without the widespread distribution of property, there could be no real economic or political freedom. Only a form of serfdom, a condition to which America was rapidly approaching in the 1930s. And that's exactly right. And we're in that situation now. We are in a situation in this country where we're told that we have to create more jobs. Creating more jobs is what we need. No, we don't. We need more entrepreneurs. We need more people creating businesses on their own, including small farm businesses, including the trade, stuff that you can do with your hands. It's a lie. One of the greatest lies of modern American society is that everybody has to go to college. You got to go to college, even if it means going into debt. You've got to go to college. That's a bold-faced lie. College is necessary for some people, but college should be primarily about a humanistic education, the humanities, seeking to become a more well-rounded person. But everybody, if making money is your goal, a college education is going to put you in a situation where you're wasting that time. When I was coming up through, I knew when I was 16 years old that I wanted to be a historian. And I wanted the credentials to be a historian because I was so intellectually curious. I wanted college. I wanted graduate school because I wanted to read. I wanted to spend that period of my life learning and soaking up as much as I could about American history, about Western civilization, etc. And so that's what I chose to do. But if you want to start a business at 18, if you want to make a lot of money so that you can, do whatever, start a family or start a business, you don't need college for that because the university system is getting rich off of telling you that you need to go to college in order to be a successful American. You don't need to go to college to do that. Actually, you can receive a better education. If really what you want is an education, you can receive a better education by simply reading books at home an hour or two every day. But let's move back to the book. So Alan Tate, this forward quotes Alan Tate, and here's what Tate has to say about the purpose of this book. The general purpose of the book will be to define what at present we are calling a genuine conservative revolution. We are in the midst of a revolutionary process in this country, but to what extent it is defined in the mind of the administration, or the administration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The point that is capitalized, he capitalizes the term conservative revolution, Alan Tate did. And that's exactly what we are having to deal with now in America. We need a new conservative revolution, not one in which we create something new, but a revolution in the sense that we bring the circle back around. We revolve, we come back around to an original point that holds a great deal of meaning to a vast amount of Americans. And I'm back on the forward here. So listen to this. Just pay attention to this statement. Most Americans would still rather own a store, a workshop, or a farm than be an employee, even if doing so meant a lower standard of living. No economic system was inevitable, nor was modern technology incompatible with the widespread ownership of property. The United States, Herbert Agar predicted, could again be, quote, a nation with a majority of small proprietors, with no all-powerful plutocracy at the top and no large proletarian class at the bottom, unquote. He prophesied, that is Herbert Agar, he prophesied that the first politician, listen to this, You want to know who's going to be the next president of the United States? I think this is a key to answer. This is the key to gaining the vote of young Americans. Herbert Agar prophesied that the first politician who appealed to the public's latent ideas regarding property and rejected the politics of relief payments would, quote, will get a response that surprises him. My prayer is that he will not be a fascist, that he will be a man who chooses to revive America, unquote. People in this country right now, at the time I'm making this video, the one thing that people need to be able to do is own property. Any kind of real estate. A house on a few acres. People want to own property. In the early 20th century, Hilaire Belloc, in his book entitled The Servile State, asked a very good question. Are we reaching a point where people don't want to own property anymore? And I think that time has proven him, I think since he wrote that book, we've had an answer to that question. People do want to own property. And we'll get into the reasons why that is the case when I bring out a couple more books. And so the reason Agar meets with the Southern agrarians in 1934 is as he is preparing to bring this book together. He met with the agrarians, and I'm reading from Edward Shapiro's forward here, to see how they could work toward the restoration of a propertied society. Work towards the restoration of a propertied society. Because what happened when Calvin Coolidge was president, and when the 1920s, they called it the Roaring Twenties, a lot of people had a lot of discretionary income during the 1920s. And after World War I, many young Americans who were raised on farms moved to cities. And they left the agrarian lifestyle because the economy was booming. The automobile was coming into existence, and Henry Ford was making it more affordable for an average American to own an automobile. But with the stock market crash of the fall of 1929, all that's gone. It's gone. And one of the reasons why that crash happened is because people were living beyond their means, living off of credit. We're in a similar situation now in American society, in the American economy. And so what's going on in the 1930s is that conservative thinkers like this are trying to figure out, okay, how can we get people to understand that it's not good enough to simply live in a city apartment complex? You need private property. You need a house. You need land where you can grow some of your own food, become more responsible for your everyday things. Small town America is more important than the cities, than the urban environment. The agrarians, Agar wrote, were the only American intellectuals who dared bet on America's future. Who dared bet on America's future. America was at a political crossroads in the 1930s. Only an anti-plutocratic conservatism, which defended private property ownership, agrarianism, and regionalism could beat back the servile state. Agar believed that millions of Americans supported the traditional values of economic individualism, democracy, and the widespread distribution of property, and would support a political alternative to the economic collectivism of Wall Street and the political collectivism of Washington, D.C. He desperately wanted to be a part of such a movement, perhaps even its voice. You see, that's where we are in this country now, in 2025, moving into 2026. We need people who are able to speak to the traditional values of economic individualism, democracy, and the widespread distribution of property. All right? That's what people still want. That's what I'm hearing from Gen Z. That's what I'm hearing from anybody who doesn't own property. We don't want the college degree. We don't want to work for somebody else. We want to be able to provide for our own selves. We want self-sufficiency. We want private property. Those are the goals that the government should be striving for at all costs. And Gen Z is properly, correctly wondering, why are we spending so much money on foreign aid when our own country is not able to produce widespread distribution of private property? Well, first of all, the government's not going to give you a home anyway. What the government needs to do is get out of the way. Get rid of private property taxes. Get rid of the federal income tax. One of the worst things that happens to a person who starts a small business, as they're first starting out, they have to pay so much money in income tax to the state, to the federal government. That should be removed. The Constitution, the founders envisioned the federal government being funded by tariffs, not an internal revenue service. And listen to this. Shapiro in this forward says that the most vigorous defense of who owns America was an editorial in the Roman Catholic Weekly called Commonweal, then edited by Michael Williams, a supporter of economic decentralization. This stemmed from the fact that the major arguments of the volume were compatible with papal teachings on property, industrial development, and social justice. The magazine expressed hope that the publication of this vitally important book might spark, quote, a really great movement to make America free, not merely in desire or in vague dreams or in dim remembrances of times past, but in actuality, here and now, unquote. It predicted that the first political leader to come out for a conservative revolution to restore property ownership would find Americans flocking to his standard. And this is a quote from Michael Williams in the Roman Catholic Weekly Commonweal. Quote, and it would not be his personal standard. Big difference between modern conservatives and older conservatives now. It would not be his personal standard. It would be the standard of traditional American liberty. That real liberty which cannot exist, materially speaking, in any nation unless the determining mass of the nation is constituted by individuals and families and free groups possessed of true property in land and in houses and in tangible things, not merely jobs and some paper holdings of shares and enterprises in the direction of which they have no part. For that mode of life tends towards servility and regimentation and degradation of human values as surely, if more slowly and less directly and less openly than communism or fascism. You might want to turn the video back and listen to that quote again a couple times. Having a job is not the American dream. Owning a business, owning a home, owning productive land, that is the American dream. It's always been that way. It doesn't matter when the government says, we've created so many jobs over the course of the past 2 or 3 years. My administration has created so many new jobs. We've brought factories back to America and people can work again. Working for somebody else is not the American dream. It has never been. Working for yourself, self-sufficiency, self-determination, self-government. This is America, not industrialization, not corporations, not the corporate world, because all you're doing is making somebody else more rich. We don't have a democracy anymore. We don't have a republic. We have an oligarchy. We have a plutocracy. But that can be changed if somebody ran for office on the platform of widespread distribution of private property, free from property taxes. Nobody wants to do it. It's not that difficult, but nobody's running for office to really make it happen. I don't know that's enough out of this. Yeah, I would be. That's enough out of that. I've got other things that I want to go to. All right, so a book that you may or may not know about, Origins of Southern Radicalism, written by Lacey K. Ford. This was published in the late 1980s. And Lacey K. Ford been at the University of South Carolina for a long, long time. This is a history of the South Carolina upcountry from 1800 to 1860. So the one thing that is so important to me about this book is his description of what used to be called country republicanism, based in private property ownership. Most people have this understanding of the antebellum South as being filled with huge plantations with a white family that owned a whole bunch of black families, and that's what Southern agriculture looked like. No. The majority of landowners in the South were smallholders. They were yeoman farmers. They were small farmers. They were not large plantation owners. And so I appreciate Lacey K. Ford's description in this book of what's called country republicanism. So let me read from Lacey K. Ford here for just a few moments. Like other South Carolinians, okay, this is South Carolina upcountry farming communities. He's talking about upcountry farmers between 1800 and 1860. The golden age of American history in my mind. Like other South Carolinians, upcountrymen clung tenaciously to an inherited country Republican ideology in which personal independence formed the very foundation of liberty. According to the tenets of country republicanism, men lacked true independence if their ability to control the affairs of their household, including its economic affairs, was denied or even circumscribed in any meaningful way. Thus, personal independence, the very essence of freedom for citizens of the antebellum upcountry, was secure only when it rested on a proper economic foundation. Newt Gingrich said on Fox News last week that American elections for the next several years are going to be based on economics. People want economic freedom, economic liberty. And why wouldn't they? What's the point in talking about anything else if you don't have financial stability? The surest guarantee of personal independence, most South Carolinians believed, was a system of political economy, listen, based on widespread ownership of productive property, land, agrarianism, the agrarian tradition. This is the answer to make this country great again. It's not Donald Trump. It is the land. It is private property ownership. There's another sentence. Here we go. Here's what I wanted to find. So this is Professor Ford again. The ideal or ethic of self-sufficiency espoused with such vigor by reformers was almost universally shared by South Carolina farmers. And despite the lamentations of the reformers, a healthy majority of upcountry farmers enjoyed self-sufficiency. But the shared ideal of self-sufficiency, an ethic which was at least partially political in origin, did not reflect any lingering commitment to a hermetic subsistence economy. And so what he's saying in this paragraph, I was going to quote the rest of it, but what he's saying is that these people were not opposed to the market economy, but they wanted to make sure that they were producing enough of food for themselves first. And then cash crops could be sold on the market economy to buy things that they can't produce on their own. And so you may think, well, this sort of ideal, it worked well for the early 19th century, before technology, before automobiles, before we have all the expenses that we have now. Ladies and gentlemen, that model is flexible enough to accommodate all of the developments since the early 19th century. It is flexible enough. Why do I say that? I am sitting on my land, my 200 acres, making a video for you on an iPhone. You can make a lot of money using technology at home, building a business, marketing whatever ideas or goods or services you want to sell. You can use the benefits of modern technology to stay at home, to create a business, to be independent from the corporate America. Now, another book I want to tell you about is entitled Third Ways from Alan Carlson. And now this is a wonderful book. I don't have time to go into all the details of it, but I will say that he and I both are contributors to a new essay on agrarianism produced by Tan Books, which is coming out next month. The American Catholic Land Movement is the title of it. Tan Books. So he's got an essay in there, and directly after his essay is mine on Southern agrarianism. So I wanted to plug that book for you. But I'm so interested in this stuff because we have. So I want to go. People are asking, what are the solutions? What are young people going to do to own private property? And this book, although it was written probably 15, 20 years ago, it's still relevant in the post 9/11 world in which we still live. And so I want to go to Carlson and share with you some of his points in the final 2 or 3 pages of this book, in his conclusion. And so he's echoing Thomas Jefferson's agrarianism. He is echoing, and Carlson, by the way, who I'm pretty sure is a devout Catholic, he has to be. I mean, my God, he's of course he is. But I didn't know he was Catholic when I first read this book 15, 20 years ago, and quite frankly, it wouldn't have mattered to me if I did know it. So Carlson describes 3 or 4 different aspects of a model that we can use to move forward, to create a better country. And the first point that he makes is this: treasure private property as the foundation of a free society. Treasure private property as the foundation of a free society. The distributists, G.K. Chesterton, Hilaire Belloc, the agrarians, and the housewives and their mates understood that liberty requires a material foundation in land, home, and other real property, and that a true democracy puts such property in the grasp of nearly all its citizens. That's where the American government has failed the younger generation. It has not done its job to put private property in the grasp of nearly all of its citizens. Carlson says, while mutual funds, stock certificates, and bonds are also valued forms of ownership, they can never confer the autonomy offered by real or physical property, real estate. So that, I think, is the most important point that Carlson makes there. So what's going on? Well, Gen Z's pissed, and rightfully so, that they're not able to own houses and land and private property. So my encouragement would be to find a way for those of us who are concerned about the widespread ownership of private property to get the government out of the way. Get the government out of the way. The founders never would have envisioned a nation where private property could be taxed by local, state, or federal governments. They never would have envisioned a country where the income of a person could be taxed. We must get rid of the federal income tax. We must get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. We must get rid of property taxes nationwide. That's what the government can do. If the government wants to help, get rid of these unnecessary taxes. And what people need to start learning, particularly at the younger generation, is that owning a 4,000 square foot house and 2 or 3 cars in a garage is not the American dream. The American dream is to own land, property that you can use to create things that are important for everyday life. Grow some food. Create a business on your land. Put a little shop on your land. Create a farm business. We need to get out of this mindset that teaches that Americans are doing well if they're working for somebody else. No, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go and work for somebody else 40 hours a week. We need to come up with a way for the economy to support people who want to start their own thing and be self-sufficient in the way they make a living. And so this is enough for one video, but I've got other thoughts on this that I'll share at a later date. But this is Alan Harrelson with the Pipe Cottage. Thank you for stopping by.